You wake to a muffled clang, your own alarm bell fashioned from a discarded saucepan and a battered spoon. The dawn light is gray and feeble, like a sickly dwarf caught between two drabs of gloom. You roll off your straw pallet in the scavenger's shed, joints protesting as if you've been kneading a particularly stubborn lump of dough. Last night's muck patch still glues itself to your trousers, but you barely notice. This coat of grime is your badge of honor, first order of business. Inspect your cart. A rattling contraption of warped planks and squeaky iron wheels. It sits half full of yesterday's hall-rotted potato peels, banana skins black as sin, and one mournful cabbage head that has liquefied into a pungent puddle. You sniff the air and cough, eyes watering. Breakfast is served. You dip a finger into the cabbage sludge, taste it with studied disgust, and fling it back into the tub. Tastes like broken dreams, you mutter, lacing up your wooden clogs. You step outside onto the narrow lane. The air clings to your lungs with the cling of a wet rag. In the dim light, you glimpse a drunken pig rooting through yesterday's muck pile, its curly tail twitching with signs of undisguised glee. You tip your battered hat. Morning hog, you say. Don't eat too much. Save some for me. You shuffle down the alley, pitchfork in hand, passing shuttered taverns where faint snoring drifts through cracks. Beyond, the market stalls are just stirring. A fishmonger yawns and drips brine onto the cobbles. A baker flings stale loaves. To the waiting dogs, you sidle up to the fish stall and point your pitchfork at a pile of fish heads. Good morrow, friend. May I claim these delicate orbs of flavor? The fishmonger gives you a sour look, but is too lazy to argue you load. 5 glistening heads into your cart, their eyes staring at you like accusing co-conspirators. Next stop, the chamber pot round. You knock on doors, presenting your shallow wooden basin. A drop of your morning elixir, Esser, you say politely. Some townsfolk pee in a single pot. Others treat it like a mini alehouse, churning out frothy brews. You dip your ladle, sniff critically, then pour the golden liquid into a stitched linen sack. The aroma is less than inspiring, but you tell yourself it's distilled character. By mid-morning, your cart resembles a monstrous still life, fish heads stacked like trophies, chamber pot broth slushing in tin cups, soggy bread scraps festooned with maggot meadows. You guide the cart to the cesspit at Deadman's Lane, a vast, rotting cathedral of filth. With practiced flair, you hoist a bucket, lower it into the pit, and haul up a steaming churn of slime. Steam coils upward, carrying hints of sulfur, rotten cheese, and shame. A sudden sneeze jolts your ungloved hand slips, and a dollop of sludge arcs through the air, landing squarely on your boots. You blink, then grin madly. Artistic choice, you announce to no one in particular, scooping up the errant drop and flicking it back into the pit. You pause to catch your breath and take in the scene. A rat the size of a small cat scuttling across the pit's edge, dragging a soggy scrap of linen. The distant toll of the church bell summoning the faithful to prayers you can't afford to ignore. The smell of fresh bread wafting from the bakery, mocking your nose. You close your eyes and inhale deeply. This is home, with your buckets now full and your cart brimming. You trundle toward the river. The Thames awaits to carry off your treasure nutrient-rich compost for faraway farms. Each wheel turn feels like a victory, a testament to your indispensable service to the city's hygiene or what passes for it. A group of merchants sneer as you pass, noses pinching. You lift your pitchfork in salute. Good day, gentle sirs. I bring you the city's finest offal. They scurry past, adjusting their collars. You chuckle, imagining them to centuries hence, their descendants praising your legacy. Probably not, but a scavenger can dream. A T the key. You sell your load to a shifty bargeman who counts coins with greasy fingers and barely contains his gag reflex. "You're a brave soul," he says, tossing you a handful of coppers. You catch them in your hat and do a little bow, nearly losing your balance on the slick stones. Coins jingling, cart empty, you feel triumphant. Tomorrow, you'll do it all again: fish brains at dawn, chamber pot sorbets at mid-morning, cesspit slush at midday. Few would envy you, but those few can go eat their stale bread in peace. You, Thomas the dunghill scavenger, have purpose, profit, and a cart full of horrors awaiting your mastery. You trudge back to your shed as the sun breaks through clouds, the world above brightening and oblivious to the festering underbelly you tend. Your laughter echoes against the walls of the narrow lane garish. Unfiltered, undeniably alive, you lie down on your straw pallet, heart pounding with pride and indigestion. You breathe in the lingering tang of the day's work and let sleep claim you. You are not dead. And tonight, in medieval London's underbelly, that's enough. You wake to the sensation of something warm, wet, and mildly acidic sliding down your cheek. You blink. A drop of curdled goat's milk has seeped through the roof of your shed. Again. That makes 3 nights in a row. Above you, a jug of forgotten dairy is fermenting in the attic space, a gift from a neighbor who believes in passive food aging. You sit up slowly, straw sticking to your neck, and wipe your face with your sleeve, which in turn smears the milk across your forehead, like a blessing from a god who smells faintly of spoiled yogurt. You breathe in. The scent of your morning is layered bass note, cabbage gas, midtones, soap ash and boiled tripe, high note, old cheese in denial. You smile. This surely is the smell of honest work, stretching with all the grace of a rotten marionette. You don your boots one lined, with yesterday's turnip peelings, the other inexplicably full of feathers. You shrug. A scavenger does not ask questions. A scavenger adapts. Outside, London wheezes awake. The streets shimmer with a moist sheen of uncertainty. Pigs root at the edges of the market square. Children chase each other with broomsticks and vague threats, and in the distance, someone is already shouting about bread. Though you can't tell if they're selling it or angry at it, you pull your cart from the lean-to. It's more rattle than structure now. One wheel screeches like a tortured violin. The other prefers to flop dramatically to the left. But it holds. You whisper words of encouragement. "Come on, Beatrix. Let's ruin some noses. You're first." Stop is the tailor's district. Not for the cloth heavens, no, but for the floor sweepings. Button shavings, sweat-soaked cuffs, thread cloths, and today's prize, a pile of discarded socks. Some stiff, some still warm, one containing what might be a cricket, but is too fast to confirm. You load the socks into a side pouch labeled "Soft Rotables." You invented the label last week. It makes you feel professional, a butcher's boy. Waves you down next, offering a bucket of trimmings. You peek inside. Mostly gristle, a few bone shards, and a curious number of tongues. One of them licks its own surface as you stare. You nod approvingly and slide the bucket onto the cart, whispering to the tongues. No arguments now. You're part of the team. Mid-morning brings you to the tannery, where a man named Ned, shirtless and coated entirely in something both glossy and cracked, beckons you toward the back vat. "We've had a reaction," he says deadpan. You peer into the pit. A new substance has formed. It bubbles. It pulses. It emits a low note, like a monk with indigestion. You are enraptured. What is it? You breathe. Ned scratches his chin with a hide scraper. Not sure. Might be leather custard. You fill a small cask and label it with chalk. Do not eat may be useful. As the sun climbs reluctantly up the soot-smeared sky, your cart grows top-heavy. A trail of dripping socks, meaty runoff, and loose hair follows you wherever you go. Children cheer. Dogs retch. One elderly woman throws you a turnip in admiration or protest. You accept it with a bow. 80 noon. You break for lunch behind Steety. Gilbert's Leper House. The patients enjoy your company, mostly because the wind changes when you arrive, temporarily masking the aroma of their own decay. One of them, a toothless gentleman named Wallace, gives you a piece of dried eel. You offer him a soft sock in return. We all wear death differently, you say, unwrapping your eel. Wallace nods. Yours smells like pickles, you beam with. Pride.by late afternoon. You've reached the river. The bargemen are waiting. One raises an eyebrow. Thomas, he says, why does your cart appear to be hissing? You gesture proudly to the bucket of tongues. Now humming in unison, choir practice. You explain, he pays you extra to keep the cart at a distance with the load transferred, the coins jingling in your pouch, and a crust of bread now yours. To savor, you begin the slow trek home. The wind picks up, lifting the smell of your shirt like a banner over a battlefield. A passing priest crosses himself twice. A horse whinnies in distress. You return to your shed. You light a stub of tallow, strip off your shirt, and hang it on the wall with reverence. It folds in half from stiffness and remains upright. You lie down on your pallet. A sock falls gently from the rafters and lands on your chest. You leave. It there, you lie down. The world stinks. You are not dead. And tonight, that's enough. Tonight, you find yourself poking a bloated sheep's stomach with a wooden spoon. It jiggles ominously. You've been standing in the butcher's alley for 15 minutes now, negotiating with a man named Rollo who smells like he bathes in marrow, and thinks fresh is just another word for not squirming. He insists the stomach contains miraculous properties. You think it contains yesterday's sausages and several regrets. Eventually, you strike a deal. In exchange for hauling away a pile of unwanted viscera, you receive 2 cracked eggs, a jug of old ale with bits, and the sheep's stomach, which you name Percy out of pity. You dump the pile of organs into your cart, where it lands with a splat that sends a nearby cat fleeing for the rooftops. The cart groans under the new load, already stacked high with matted hair from the wig maker. 3 jars of sour cream gone militant, and a pillowcase full of shriveled turnips shaped like minor British nobility. It is, as they say, a very good evening. You whistle as you wheel your growing empire through the lantern-lit streets. The cobblestones squelch beneath your boots. A puddle of unknown contents splashes up your shin. You barely notice. You are Thomas the Scavenger. You are the nostrils' nightmare, the city's unconscious. And tonight, you hunt for brains. Your next stop, the barber surgeon's shop. A dim, narrow room that smells of vinegar and iron, where bloodletting is cheaper than soup and just as filling. You rap on the shutter 3 times with your ladle. The flap opens. A hand reaches out, holding a jar. Inside the jar, something pale, something pulsing, pig brain. The voice croaks. Still warm, you nod solemnly and accept the gift. Breakfast, you whisper. He hands you a second jar. This one's labeled simply, do not feed to dogs. You don't ask. You know better. You wrap the jars in a sack and stow them beneath the linen shreds you collected from the dyer's apprentice, bright blue and yellow, though one smells sharply of vinegar and the other of boiled onion. The resulting perfume makes your eyes water. You blink through it and carry on, turning down Plaguefoot Lane. You spot a familiar figure, Brother Hugh, the wandering monk with a halo of dandruff and a heart of fermented gold. He waves, then opens his robe and reveals. "A wheel of cheese. Saint Benedict appeared to me in a dream," he says. "Told me this cheese is cursed. All so blessed. It depends on who eats it." You blink. What happens if no one eats it? The monk shrugs. It sings. You accept the cheese. It's soft in the center and audibly wheezing. You place it gently. Atop Percy the stomach, who emits a bubble of approval, you continue on, pushing your creaking cart through a part of town even rats whisper about. The cobbles here are slick with a green sheen that glows faintly in the moonlight. A dog howls once, then burps. A shopkeeper in an alley gestures you closer. She holds a jar filled with gray sludge. "Last week's oysters," she whispers. Still twitching, you stare at the jar. Something inside stirs, then taps the glass. Once you buy it immediately, your cart now groans with joy or indigestion. Hard to say. You decide it's time to return home. But first, a detour. The tannery's dumping ditch. There, beneath the wooden sluices and leather racks, lies the city's true treasure, a slurry of hide scraps, lime, and discarded dreams. You scoop a bucket's worth into an empty eel barrel and seal it with wax. You plan to sell it as aromatic mulch to an alchemist who doesn't know the difference. On your way home, your wheel catches on something. You kneel to inspect. It's a tooth. A molar, large and unusually golden. You hold it up to the moonlight. It winks back. You add it to the cheese. Back at your shed, you unload with care. The pig brain gets a place of honor next to your pickled rat. The cheese, now softly humming a Gregorian chant, is stored in a cool crock. Percy is rolled gently onto a bed of clean straw. You light a candle and place it beside him. He deserves dignity. You sit beside your hoard and unwrap the cracked eggs. They ooze a yellow that fights its way out of the shell like it's seen things. You cook them slowly on a tile heated by last week's coal. Into the mix, a slice of brain, a chunk of monk cheese, and a dollop of old ale. The smell is unbelievable. You take a bite. It tastes like memories. You lie down, warm and full, your fingers sticky with marrow and glory. Outside, the city groans in its sleep. But down here, in your kingdom of cast-offs, all is well. You lie down. Something in the corner bubbles. You are not dead. And tonight, in the belly of London, that is enough. Tonight, you find yourself crawling on your hands and knees beneath the back porch of St. Cuthbert's almshouse, hunting for something. The matron called the sacred sausage. She wasn't being poetic. Apparently, a nun dropped a whole string of cured meats into the crawlspace 2 weeks ago, and since then, the holy men inside have been plagued by dreams of meat serpents and the faint scent of nutmeg. You, Thomas, esteemed connoisseur of crawlspace cuisine, have been summoned to retrieve it. Your fingers sink into something damp and suspiciously warm. You tug. It resists. You tug harder. It growls after a short scuffle involving a broom handle. 3 apologies to a nest of hedgehogs, and the loss of 1 boot. You emerge victorious, clutching a partially fossilized sausage rope. It smells of thyme, mold, and revelation. You're paid in prayers and half a custard tart that tastes faintly of beeswax. Back on your feet, boot retrieved. You stagger through the moonlit streets with your cart, now bearing the sacred sausage. A lopsided wheel of miracle cheese, a bottle of goat's milk that separated itself into 3 hostile layers, and a sack of goose feathers you found stuffed inside a drain pipe behind the wigmakers. You stop briefly to admire your collection. It hisses gently. The brain jar from yesterday has developed a bubble system, and the vinegar cloth now glows faintly in the dark. You nod with satisfaction. It is only then you notice the smell. It's new. It's not your usual palette of fish. Rot, onion gas, and wet wool. It's floral. You wheel the cart around and follow your nose until you come upon it. The perfumer's refuse pile, and oh, what a treasure! Discarded petals, rotting lavender cakes, sludgy oils that smell like crushed, dreams and powdered bishops. You dig with reverence, filling jars with the rainbow goop, careful not to disturb the rats in powdered wigs, having a soiree atop the mound. One particularly elegant rat doffs his hat as you depart. You bow in return, at the base of the pile. You find something incredible, a broken bottle labeled Essence of Desire. It smells like wine, horse hair, and disappointment. You love it. Into the cart it goes. Next, you make your rounds through the cheese quarter, where a merchant recognizes you. Thomas, he says, you'll want this. He presents a wedge of blue-veined horror, wrapped in cloth that shivers. What is it? Was. Gouda. Then gorgonzola. Now, it just is. You offer sock and trade. He accepts. On your way to the Thames, a boy offers to help push your cart. He lasts 3 steps before fainting. You carry him to a nearby stoop and place a sprig of vinegar cloth on his forehead. He may never be the same, but he'll be stronger. For it the key. The bargeman stares long and hard at your cargo. You've brought me what smells like a heresy, Thomas. You nod. And it sings. He listens. Somewhere in the cart, the sacred sausage lets out a long, low hoonk. He gives you 8 coins and a roasted beet. You walk home in triumph, pockets clinking, arms glistening with old cheese oil and mystery perfume. The stars seem brighter tonight. You feel regal. Back at your shed, you light a stub of candle and sit cross-legged before your prize shelf. You arrange today's haul carefully, the sausage now tied with a red ribbon, the broken perfume bottle sealed with wax, the gorgonzola, and a feather you suspect belonged to a poet. You sip the separated goat's milk. The top layer tastes of almonds and dust. The bottom layer bites back. You lie down, the custard tart still warm in your belly. The rat in the rafters hums a lullaby. Something pops inside the brain jar. You smile. You lie down. The moon drools light through the slats. You are not dead. And tonight, perfumed in plague and cheese, that is enough. Tonight, you find yourself nose to shell with a goose egg the size of a melon. It is wedged between 2 sacks of beet pulp behind the grocer's stall and, disturbingly, has an eye painted on it. Not drawn. Not carved. Painted. In excellent detail. With lashes, you squint. It seems to be looking at you. You gently tap it with your ladle. The egg wobbles but does not crack. A faint greasy cluck echoes from somewhere far away, and your spine quietly reevaluates its life choices. Naturally, you steal it immediately. You nestle it into the softest part of your cart between the vinegar rags and the still humming sausage and cover it with a blanket of perfumed onion skins. It's warm to the touch. You whisper to it, "You'll be safe now, my unsettling little treasure." You make your way down Kendallwick Lane, where the candle maker's apprentices toss wax scraps into a pit behind the shop. You call this place the Glisten. It smells of melted bees, burnt hair, and ambition. You scoop handfuls of wax blobs into your basket, many still shaped like ears or hooves. The apprentices stare as you work, but no one stops you. They know you are a legend. A stink-slicked myth with a ladle of destiny. One of them nervously offers you a candle stub in the shape of St. Barnabas. Melts funny. He says you accept it with a bow. The next alley brings you to the Pickle Witch. She lives in a barrel and sells cucumbers that whisper your name. You don't ask how she knows it. She always knows it. Tonight, she offers you a deal. 1 jar of spite pickles, she says, lifting a lid. Inside, vinegar, sorrow, and something green that flips you off. In exchange, she continues, you give me a favor. Not now. Later. When the air smells of herring and teeth, you don't hesitate. You take the jar, bow respectfully, and try not to breathe in too deeply. The pickles radiate regret. You place them near the eye egg, which sighs audibly. You stroke the shell and murmur, you'll get used to each other. Next, you visit the barber Chandler, a man who cuts hair, pulls teeth, sings ballads, and boils soap sometimes simultaneously. He greets you with open arms and a scalding hug. I have something for you, Thomas, he whispers, eyes darting. A treasure. He disappears into the back room and returns with a sock, a single sock. Enormous. Possibly ursine. You accept. It reverently and add it to your soft row tables. As you leave, he calls after you. It once belonged to a man who couldn't die unless someone complimented his handwriting. You nod. A safe sock then. By now, the sky is a bruise and the fog rolls in like spoiled milk. Your cart sloshes with purpose. The vinegar cloth has dissolved into a fine paste. The sausage is humming the same note as the moon. You turn. Down Butcher's Hollow and find 3 drunk friars playing cards with a dead chicken. One offers you a bet. Win, and you get a cask of mystery jelly. Lose, and you have to eat a page of the Book of Psalms. You win, mostly because the chicken appears to be cheating. The jelly cask goes in the cart. It trembles. You name it, Martha at the river. The bargeman sees you coming and simply drops his jaw. You can see the glint of tears in his eyes. Thomas, he breathes. What in the name of Saint Flatulence have you brought me? You tap the eye egg gently. It blinks. The sausage hums louder. He pays you not in coins, but in roasted garlic, 5 salted plums, and a hug that changes both of you. You walk home under a moon fat with menace. Your boots squelch with grace. A choir of frogs sings your name in 4-part disharmony. You arrive at your shed, light a wax ear candle, and set your treasures in a semicircle. The egg goes in the center, crowned with a pickle. The sock is folded. Beside the brain jar, Martha the jelly quivers approvingly. You sit in silence, sipping plum juice and stroking your beard, which now smells faintly of boiled goat. You lie down. The egg watches. You are not dead. And tonight, that is enough. Tonight, you find yourself staring at an unusually confident snail. It is perched on top of your cart's left wheel, its antennae extended, its shell glistening with pride. It has, by all appearances, claimed the wheel as its throne. You nod solemnly, recognizing nobility when you see it. Welcome, your grace, you whisper, and gently push the cart forward. The snail remains unmoved. The wheel naturally squeaks in protest. Everything in your cart is damp again, not with rain, but with the slow condensation of urban filth that forms when night air kisses rotting pickles and unnamable jellies. You sniff. Somewhere in the depths of your wares, the sacred sausage is fermenting into a new stage of consciousness. You're proud. Tonight's first collection is from the scribe's quarter. They always leave you bundles of shredded parchment, ink-soaked rags, and quills too bent to write, but too sharp to sit on. You arrive just as the scribes are closing their shutters, yawning into the gloom. Thomas, one grunts, tossing a sack from a second-story window. It hits the ground with a poetic splurge. You open it inside. Failed drafts, rejected poems, and a damp sketch of a man kissing a radish. You nod, deeply moved. Into the cart it goes. On your way toward Fishbone Court, a boy runs up, wide-eyed. He holds out both hands. In one, a clump of moss-shaped dearly, like a bishop's mitri. In the other, a jar filled with thick, clear fluid. Which would you like? He asks. You take the jar without hesitation. Moss is for beginners. you say, and continue on. The boy bows, enlightened. Fishbone Court is especially fragrant tonight. Someone has overturned a barrel of eel parts, and a community of drunk chickens is picking through it with alarming intent. You step carefully, nod to the chickens, and collect a bucket of fish eyes that sparkle like marbles. A goose hisses at you. You hiss back. It nods in respect. Back in the main square, a crowd has gathered. A miracle is underway. A child, they say, has sneezed 17 times in a row and conjured a perfect sculpture of St. Gertrude out of phlegm. You wade through the admirers and behold the work, glossy, lumpy, glistening in the torchlight. It smells like mint and hubris. An apothecary approaches you. I'll trade you the whole sculpture for 2 pickled plums and a whisper. You accept. Instantly, pressing the plums into her palm and leaning in close. She's watching us from the vinegar moon. You whisper. The apothecary shudders. Of course, you carefully lift the holy snot statue onto a flat plank and balance it atop the wheel where the snail still reigns. The snail seems pleased. The sculpture jiggles in rhythm with your steps. You feel powerful. A drunk nobleman stumbles from a tavern and pukes into a barrel of rosewater. You helpfully stir it with your ladle, then scoop a sample into a glass bottle. Vintage 1387, you murmur. Notes of shame atop that. A cobbler hands you a pair of boots filled with soup. You don't ask. Into the cart they go. Your final stop is behind the theater, where the actors leave broken props and failed dreams. Tonight's bounty, a papier muck. Goat head, 3 wigs infested with singing lice, and a script titled Romeo and Judith, the pancake tragedy. You consider staging it someday with rats. You reach the river. The bargeman meets you at the quay, expression already braced. Thomas, he says, eyeing your wares. If you show me one more sneezing statue, I swear I'll cry. You unveil it. It shines in the moonlight, he cries. You get paid in a pouch of smoked raisins and a boot that fits your left foot perfectly. You weep silently. Back at your shed, you arrange your finds in quiet ceremony. The snail is given a shrine made of ink rags and broken spoons. The snot statue sits beside Martha, the jelly who gurgles in approval. The fish eyes are placed in a jar labeled for later. You taste one. Crunchy, horrifying, almost citrusy. The sacred sausage thrums in its sleep. You remove your boots, shake the soup into a bowl, and sip deeply. It tastes of leather and confusion. You sigh with contentment. You lie down. The eye egg winks once. The snail sings a single note. You're not dead. And tonight, amid saints and sneezes, that is more than enough. Tonight, you find yourself dining with a bucket, not near a bucket, not holding one, but truly with one. It's the tall iron one from behind the vinegar mill, the one you rescued after the cooper tried to fill it with nails and throw it into the canal. You named it Gregory. Gregory has a dent on his left flank that looks like a small surprised goose, and tonight he's been invited to share supper on the menu. Yesterday's soup boots, now served cold, a slice of blessed snot statue. It's beginning to crust nicely. And 3 flakes of mystery cheese that detached themselves from the sacred sausage while it was humming in its sleep. You're not sure how sausage sheds cheese. You don't ask. You simply eat, Gregory being a bucket. Abstains, the candle on. Your shelf flickers, throwing long shadows across your collection. The snail on the wheel has constructed a modest palace out of broken buttons. The eye egg has stopped blinking, but now emits the occasional low hum, like a scholar deep in thought. You find this reassuring. Outside, the city wheezes with the midnight breeze. A choir of cats is fighting against sopranos versus tenors, and somewhere a guard drops a halberd and curses the cobbles. You stretch, burp gently, and don your cloak. Tonight is special. Tonight is harvest night, not for grain, not for apples. No, this is the night when the wig makers clean their floors. And to you, dear Thomas, that means dandruff, the flakes of the elite, the scalp snow of nobles, the powdered shame of actors and magistrates alike. You push your cart with holy purpose, its wheels singing in metallic staccato, your ladle strapped to your back like a knight's blade. You arrive just as the first bags are being thrown out enormous. Sacks of hair, lace, ribbon, powder, and the precious, precious scalp sprinkles. You open a sack. A white puff greets you like a gentle slap from a powdered duchess. You cough once, then twice, then inhale sharply through your nose. A perfect snort. You swoon. Delightful. You whisper. The apprentices watch with mild horror. As you scoop handfuls into your cart, laughing softly to yourself. One of them, a girl with a birthmark shaped like a meat pie, taps your shoulder. Sir, she asks timidly, what do you do with it? You pause. Think. Smile. I sell it. 2 barbers who miss snow, you say. She nods solemnly. It makes sense. You wheel onward, flakes drifting behind you like the wake of a garbage galleon. Your next destination is the roof behind the physician's office. It's not sanitary. It's not allowed. And it's very much your favorite spot. Because up there, each week, they dump their leeches, not the used ones. The lazy ones. The ones who refuse to suck. The failures, you love them. You climb the ladder slowly, each rung creaking under the weight of your pouch full of raisins and secrets. At the top, you find them waiting, dozens of fat little quitters, wiggling in sticky heaps. You scoop them into a velvet bag, whispering encouragement. You don't have to be good. You just have to be yourselves. Back on the street, a wind picks up. Your dandruff trail becomes a blizzard. Children cheer. A priest yells something about divine punishment. You throw him a leech. He ducks. His sermon gains credibility. By now, your cart holds 1 bag of rebellious leeches, 3 sacks of noble dandruff, a wig that screams when wet, a cork sealed with hair and honey. You pause at the tavern and collect a cask of mouth broth, liquid wrung from mugs, too lazy to be cleaned. You sip it. It's fizzy. You do not investigate. The last item of the evening comes from behind the puppeteer's stage, a pair of tiny wooden shoes, clearly meant for a marionette, but carved with exquisite detail. You slide them onto your pinky toes. They fit. You return. To your shed triumphant. Inside, the eye egg lets out a tiesk as if judging your posture. The sacred sausage vibrates once, releasing a cloud of meaty spores. The snot statue appears to have grown a second head. You approve. You open the bag of leeches and release them onto a plate of warm cabbage. They slurp lazily, thrilled. One climbs your sleeve and takes a nap on your shoulder. Gregory the bucket, still seated at the table, lets out a resonant clang. Of approval, you bow to him. You lie down, dandruff in your hair, broth on your lips, puppet shoes warming your toes. You are not dead. And tonight, powdered by strangers and cheered by buckets, that is more than enough. Tonight, you find yourself mid-conversation with a meat pie. It as a crust like ancient armor, fence-shaped like nostrils, and a single olive placed precisely in the center, as if it's staring at you. Which it is. You're certain. You found it behind the bishop's house, perched atop a discarded prayer stool, nestled between a wet hymnal and a goose feather quill that smells of ham. The pie spoke first. Do not eat me. It croaked, for I contain history. You took this as an invitation. Now the pie rests on a velvet cushion in your cart, wrapped lovingly in an old sock that once belonged to a dentist you accidentally befriended. You ask the pie what kind of history it holds, secrets it whispers. About stew. You nod in understanding. Your first stop is Westchip Alley, where the mollusk man lives, a mysterious hermit known for breeding snails, clams, and creatures no one dares to name. He greets you barefoot, eyes wild, tunic soaked in brine. "I have what you seek," he says without prompting, holding up a glass jar filled with something inside, a gray blob with eyes. Many eyes. Too many. One of them winks. "Found it in a boot," he adds. You trade him a cup of dandruff and the nose-flavored candle from your shelf. He weeps, overcome with emotion. As you place the jar into your cart, the blob emits a musical poot. The meat pie responds with a curt humph. They are clearly not friends. You continue on. Behind the bakery, you collect the weekly crust pile. It contains one loaf in the shape of an eel, 3 rolls, stuffed with raisins and remorse, a cinnamon bun currently inhabited by ants who pay rent in crumbs. The baker gives you a wink and a pat on the shoulder that smells of yeast and guilt. Next, you stop at the cooper's yard, where broken barrels go to die. You find a small one half filled with onion water and a single bootlace soaking inside. You lift the barrel. It sloshes. It moans. You're intrigued. Into the cart it goes. At this point, your haul includes a talking pie, a jar of googly mollusk horror bread that regrets itself, a barrel of weeping onion infusion, and, of course, the snoring sausage and contemplative eye egg from days past. You take a short detour to the bell ringer's shed, where discarded clappers and rope trimmings pile high. He gives you a pouch of bell dust. What do I do with it? You ask. Rub it on your dreams. He replies, fair enough. At the tavern, a man offers you 5 copper pieces to remove a potato that's been living under his bench for 3 months. You do so. The potato protests, but ultimately surrenders. You name it, Wigbert, and cradle it gently. The meat pie mutters something in Latin. You ignore it. As you approach the river, the air turns thick with fog and duck breath. The bargeman sees your cart and begins shaking his head before you even reach him. "Thomas," he sighs, "this cart looks like a sermon I once had nightmares about." You say nothing. You simply lift the pie. It blinks at him. The bargeman pays you in salt, a jar of pickled string, and a drawing of a chicken holding a sword. It's your best pay yet. On the way home, the jar creature hums softly. The pie hums. Back in a minor key. Your cart becomes a rolling opera of horror and harmony. You reach your shed just as the moon peeks through the chimney smoke. You unpack with care. The mollusk jar goes on a high shelf, labeled, "Absolutely not." The pie is placed on a silver plate, just in case it's royalty. Wigbert the potato is given a straw throne and a fork scepter. The onion barrel goes under your bed. For later, the bread, you eat it. The ants agree to stay and clean your cartwheels. You light a candle made of leech wax and sing a lullaby to your pickled rat. The sacred sausage twitches in rhythm. The eye egg rolls once, thoughtfully. You lie down, head full of bread songs and mollusk prophecy. The meat pie whispers something final, then goes quiet. You're not dead. And tonight, that is enough. Tonight, you find yourself brushing slime off your only clean sock. Not just any slime. This is the translucent, stringy variety that hisses when provoked and tastes faintly of peppered mackerel. You know this because earlier you slipped in it face first while trying to collect your morning tribute from the barber's leech bucket. The leeches were unimpressed. One tried to slap you. You lost a little dignity and your last piece of dried eel. Both tragedies. You rise from your pallet, Stretch your spine until it cracks like boiled bones, and pat Wigbert the potato for luck. He's sprouted another eye. It stares at you. You wink. He blushes. You respect each other's journeys. This evening begins with a summons, a real one, with ribbon and wax seal and a faint aroma of pickled rhubarb. Someone of high status has requested your services. You know because the wax bears the mark of Lord Mulchbucket, a nobleman famed for three things: his collection of toe bones, his obsession with fermented butter, and the fact that his breath once wilted a cathedral choir mid him. You dress in your finest coat, the one with the stitched-on shoulder rat, a tribute to Verminicus the Elder, and hitch up your cart. Now rattling with yesterday's blessings, the jar mollusk still humming, the sacred sausage now attempting Morse code, and the sleeping meat pie, whose whispers have turned to rhymed threats. Lord Mulchbucket lives in a mansion with more chimneys than servants and a moat filled with mystery gravy. A drawbridge lowers as you approach, creaking dramatically. You wave. The guards gag discreetly. Inside, you're led to a dining chamber that smells of regret and clove. The Lord awaits you at a long table, covered in objects best left unnamed. Half-peeled pears, a rooster's monocle, and a bowl of something blinking. Thomas, he booms, stroking a beard that appears to be made of wet hay, I've summoned you to collect a situation. He gestures toward a small wooden crate on the floor. You open it. Inside, a single tooth. Enormous. Yellow. Radiating energy came from a dream, he explains. Woke up with it in my boot. Now it won't stop asking questions. Indeed, the tooth rattles gently. What is time? It whispers. You nod. A philosopher's molar. You agree to take it, and he pays you in a velvet pouch of anchovy paste, 2 slightly terrified pigeons, and a sealed envelope labeled, for emergencies only. You don't open it. You respect drama. Back in the street, you place the molar next to the mollusk, hoping for friendship. They stare at each other. The sausage lets out a low ee. It's going to be a long night. Your next stop is behind the apothecary's shop, where expired remedies go to die. Tonight's selection includes 1 jar of cleansing tincture for the anxious liver, dried toad labeled, maybe magical, a poultice that smells exactly like your Uncle Jeff's niece. You take all 3, plus a packet of herbs. Called whisperweed. When chewed, it makes your teeth hum. You chew anyway. The molar joins in. Is the salfa soup? It asks. You nod. With dumplings, it sighs, content. Passing by the fishmonger's stable, you find a pile of fish. Scales glowing faintly blue. You collect them in a silk sock and tuck them beside the snot statue, which has now grown something resembling a necktie. You compliment it. It sneezes in approval. The alley behind the blacksmith's yields a bent horseshoe and a ladle with mysterious scorch marks. You name it Clarissa and give her a place of honor atop your ladle rack. She rattles gently, proud to belong. As fog rolls in like curdled soup, you trudge toward the river, your cart heavier than ever and beginning to smell like a philosophical seafood stew. The bargeman meets you with a sigh and a mop. What have you done now, Thomas? He asks, wiping his eyes. You present the molar. It speaks. Why are you so afraid of mirrors? The bargeman drops the mop and hands you a bundle of smoked cheese and a letter from his aunt that reads, He's ready. You do not ask. Back. At your shed, you unload with reverence. The molar is placed atop a velvet turnip. The mollusk is given an egg cup. The pigeons are introduced to the bucket Gregory. They bow. You light a candle made of earwax and coal dust. It smells like secrets. Wigbert sighs happily in his throne. The eye-egg gurgles. The sacred sausage falls silent for the first time in days. You sip tincture, chew whisperweed, and stare at the ceiling until the stars blink back. You lie down. The meat pie giggles. You're not dead. And tonight, in this soup of self and slime, that is more than enough. Tonight, you find yourself staring into the crust of the meat pie. It is opened. Not cracked, not broken open like a mouth or a wound, revealing a glistening interior of unknown meats, strange herbs, and what appears to be a chess piece. A bishop, probably. You don't ask. The pie speaks again. Its voice is low, sticky, and smells faintly of rosemary. Thomas, it says, we need to talk. You glance around your shed. The molar stirs on its velvet turnip. The eye egg emits a wet blink. The sacred sausage lets out a prolonged wheezes. Gregory the bucket tilts slightly in anticipation. Even Wigbert the potato holds his breath, or would. If he had lungs, what about? You ask, still chewing on a bit of whisperweed from last night. Your teeth buzz softly. The pie takes a moment about the pudding. It says finally, you drop the ladle, the pudding. You haven't thought about it in years. Not since the incident. Not since that fateful spring when the pudding took shape in the community cauldron and began absorbing thoughts. Not since it learned your middle name. You swallow. What about it? The pie twitches. Its crust shudders like a curtain in a suspicious wind. It's awake again. It wants you back. You nod slowly, gripping the ladle tightly now. The handle feels warm. A drop of gravy lands on your toe. The game has begun. You dress swiftly, donning your ceremonial scavenging cloak, the one made from stitched-together tavern napkins and the hem of a disgraced bishop's robe. You pin the honorary mouse tooth brooch to your chest, slip on your sock gloves, and fasten your belt of useful things. Pickled garlic, emergency pickle, spoon of mystery, a note that reads, kick me, but gently. Tonight, you must revisit the place, but first supplies. You stop by the tanner's vat for a ladleful of high jelly. It's thick, acrid, and burns slightly when you hum. You hum anyway. Into the flask it goes. Next, a visit to Old Blemish, the candle seller with only one eyebrow and 17 regrets. He offers you a soul flame, a candle that burns memories instead of wax. You light it once and instantly recall the time you bit into a live anchovy thinking it was a fig. You thank him. He winces. Down the lane, you trade a full sneeze. In a jar for a roll of garlic scroll, parchment soaked in brine and superstition. The shopkeeper wraps it around your wrist. For protection, she mutters. Or seasoning. Your cart rattles with anticipation. The malice comes a battle tune. The molar bites its own edge, murmuring entropy, the sacred sausage sizzles. The eye egg slowly turns toward the east. It remembers. You pass the old gate at shutters. End and follow the crooked path past the pit of frogs and the tree that cries at noon. Soon you arrive at the sunken courtyard, overgrown, forgotten, and still faintly quivering. The cauldron sits at the center. Covered now, but breathing. You approach slowly. From within comes the familiar burble. The glorp. The theblip. The unmistakable. For thinking pudding, you bow. The cauldron lid lifts an inch. You've returned. It says, I brought sauce. You reply, holding up the high jelly. There's silence. Then, good. I'm dry. You pour the jelly in. Steam rises. The air smells like history and regret. You brace yourself. Do you still remember what you did? The pudding asks, you do. Of course, you do. You added nutmeg when it asked for parsley. A simple mistake. A culinary betrayal. The pudding was never the same. It started reciting poetry in Latin and tried to unionize the turnips. I was young. You whisper. The pudding sighs. We all were a long pause. Then a burp. We forgive you. The pie in your cart lets out a quiet sob. The molar hums a lullaby. The sacred sausage emits one last poot and goes still. Peace. At last, you cover the cauldron gently and leave a single fish scale on the rim, a symbol of respect. The eye egg nods as you pass. Back at your shed, the objects are calm. The jar. Mollusk snoozes. Gregory, the bucket glows faintly. Wigbert has sprouted a tiny crown. You light the soul flame and let it burn your least favorite memory, the time you confused a snail for a coin purse. It feels good. You lie down, head full of forgiveness, feet wrapped in fermented linen. You are not dead. And tonight, reconciled with the pudding of your past, that is more than enough. Tonight, you find yourself building a wind instrument out of fish. You didn't plan this, but when you opened your cupboard to reach for the pickled napkin you use as a scarf, 3 salted herring fell to the floor in a neat row, each one hollow. Rubbery and somehow melodious. You tapped the first with a spoon, ping. The second, poon. The third, PHRRRPT.IT was music. Naturally, you tie them together with a string of old bootlace and blow gently. A sound escapes a cross between a sneeze and a disappointed duck. You play again, and Wigbert the potato tilts in time. You have a gift. You tuck the herring flute into your cloak and nod to your crew, the sacred sausage still silent, possibly hibernating, the molar philosophical as ever, the jar mollusk now wearing a cravat, and the pie, who hasn't stopped. Muttering since the pudding incident, your mission tonight. Visit the spice smuggler. She lives beneath the vinegar bridge, in a shack built from stolen signs and barrels full of cinnamon lies. Her name is Mabel, but everyone calls her Madam. Sniff. She greets you with narrowed eyes and a nose so sharp it could core an apple. Thomas, she says, you smell of regret and eel, you beam. It's my new rinse. She offers you a pouch of forbidden nutmeg and a tiny vial of powdered peppercorn bark, harvested by monks who are never allowed to sneeze. You offer her a jar labeled whale essence maybe and a drawing of a duck in a bonnet. Deal. From there, you pass through Sneeze Bottom Market, where stalls sell boot polish that screams and onions that speak only Latin. You gather a cracked bell pepper that rings when offended, a wedge of cheese that has begun writing poetry, and mold a small paper bag filled with mystery lint, which hums softly and smells of ambition. You add them to the cart. The sausage twitches. The pie hisses. Something's brewing. At the square, you're stopped by a man in fine rags and a powdered beard. He introduces himself with a bow so low it threatens gravity. Reginald von Picklegrind, he says. Composer, philosopher, collector of smells. You shake his hand. It squeaks. He begs to hear your herring flute. You play a quick melody. Firpt, pong, wheeze, cough. His eyes fill with tears. Genius, he whispers. Chaos in scale. He insists on gifting you a sealed jar containing essence of rejected opera. You don't open it. You feel its power. As night deepens, you descend into the lower gutters, a forgotten web of tunnels beneath the Baker's Guild, where the air is thick with flower ghosts and the remnants of pudding second class, not the thinking pudding. This is its lesser cousin, the one born from burned scraps, resentment, and flour swept up after closing. The guild tried to bury it. You know better. You find it. Lumpy, crusted over, humming tunelessly in a corner drain. It's trying to form a shape, mostly legs and a single ear. Thomas, it wheezes. Do you have raisins? You do. A handful. Dried, salted, and partially fossilized. You feed them in slowly, one by one. It purrs. In return, it gives you a secret, a recipe for resentment biscuit. You copy it down in your notebook of edible lies. On your way out, you're nearly flattened by a falling ham. You look up, above you, atop a precarious ledge of buttered stones, stands a pig wearing a cape. You salute. It nods back home. Your cart clinks with glory. The sacred sausage has begun to glow faintly purple. The mollusk now whistles when bored. The molar speaks in riddles about soup and time. The pie laughs. You light your waxy fish candle, unwrap the pudding biscuit recipe, and study its runes. 3 spoons of spite, 1 sigh of disappointment. Bake until it remembers your name. You fall asleep with the herring flute across your chest. You're not dead. And tonight, with music in your fingers and pudding in your past, that is enough. Tonight, you find yourself being crowned, not with gold, not even with twine, but with a cabbage leaf wearing a feather. A slightly moldy feather. You are now the mold Duke of Westgrime, declares a woman wearing 3 aprons and 1 boot. The gathered crowd, 7 old men, a goat, and someone possibly made entirely of rags applauds politely. This is not how you expected your evening to begin, but then, that's the charm of the annual Westgrime Mold Festival. Nothing is expected. Only accepted. It began when you stumbled upon the square, following the scent of sourdough and forgotten shoes. A sign written in onion ink read, "Tonight only, contest of cultures." Beneath it, a table of moldy cheeses, weeping pickles, and bread slices with personalities awaited judgment. Naturally, you entered the contest by accident. All you did was sneeze on a muffin. The crowd gasped. The muffin curdled. You were in. Your cart, by this point, had begun attracting moths that refused to leave. They orbit your sausage like pilgrims. The sacred sausage now emits a low, pleasant hum, like it's meditating on rot. The eye egg has taken to gently, spinning in its basket, as though performing an interpretive dance. The molar simply mutters, "Spore, spore," every few minutes. Comforting, your entry into the mold festival? A biscuit from yesterday, aged overnight in your sock and gently kissed by vinegar fumes, you present it. It hisses, the crowd leans in. The judges confer. One faints. Another weeps. A third eats it whole and immediately begins quoting poetry. Your crown, your prize. A jar of royal spores, contents unlisted. A scarf made of old radish skins. And a small, glowing stone that hums only on Thursdays. You accept all. 3 with solemn reverence and tie the scarf round your waist. It smells of ambition and salad. After your coronation, a boy approaches with a burlap sack. "Sir," he says, "I bring you the dancing seeds." He appends the sack. Tiny seeds. Spill out sunflower, pumpkin, mysterious, and as they hit the ground, they begin to shuffle. Not jump, not bounce. Shuffle, side to side. In rhythm, a small beat begins to hum. You realize they are performing. You name the seeds collectively, the gentle crunch ensemble, and scoop them into a jar. They settle quickly, then begin a soft tapping against the glass. You nod in approval. You make your way back toward the city, stopping by the alley of forgotten tailors. There, between broken mannequins and cursed thimbles, you find a cloak. It whispers. You lift it. It's heavier than it looks, stitched from moth wings and lint dreams. You wrap it around your shoulders and feel instantly respected by nearby cats. One meows in Latin. The cloak, you discover, has a pocket that contains a list of names written in invisible ink. You can smell them, a thimble filled with jam where the jam came from. Unclear, a tiny ladder, possibly for fleas. You place the ladder next to the mollusk. It seems grateful. At the riverside, the bargeman greets you with narrowed eyes. What are you wearing? You spin slowly. The scarf flutters. The cloak hisses. The molar chants something about yeast. I am the mole duke. You reply. He nods uncomfortably. You offer him the stone. He accepts, only to discover it vibrates in his palm and whispers compliments about his years. He blushes. You receive, in return, a jar of water from somewhere holy and a coupon for 5 free sneezes valid until next moon. Back in your shed, you hang the cloak beside Gregory the bucket. He leans slightly as if impressed. The mollusk climbs. Its ladder, the sausage emits 3 short notes, and the pie sings a lullaby in a minor key. Wigbert wears the radish scarf like royalty. You light a candle made of pressed mushroom wax and drink a thimble of jam in silence. The seeds tap in there. Jar. The eye egg stops spinning. All is still. You lie down. Your crown slides over one eye. You're not dead. And tonight, with spores in your breath and titles on your tongue, that is enough. Tonight, you find yourself officiating a wedding, not because you're qualified, not because you're ordained, but because the only available priest sneezed himself unconscious after sniffing your royal spore jar, and someone had to do it. Naturally, everyone looked at you. The bride is a cracked copper kettle named Mildred, the groom, a sentient cabbage named Jerome. They met last week at the Mold Festival, when Jerome rolled off a cart into Mildred's lap and promptly proposed. She gurgled once in acceptance. You stand under a makeshift archway of broomsticks and drying codskins, wearing your moth cloak and radish scarf, the royal mold crown still perched at a defiant angle. In your hand, the ceremonial ladle, polished for the occasion with eel oil and old tears. Do you, Jerome, take this kettle to be your lawfully sizzled wife? The cabbage rustles with resolve. And do you, Mildred, accept Jerome and all his leaves? Mildred whistles softly and leaks a little. By the power temporarily and mistakenly vested in me, you announce, I now declare you. Co-fermenters the crowd to rats in paper hats, a beetroot choir, and your mollusk, who insisted on playing flute, erupts in polite clapping and moist applause. The pie sings a wedding hymn. The molar offers cryptic vows in rhyming couplets. The sacred sausage emits a low note of approval, vibrating slightly in its nest of scented rags. You weep softly. Love is real, the reception, held behind the coal cellar near the leper bell, is a roaring success. Guests feast on. Pickled plum custard, spoiled cream, and hats something described as off pork, and a cake made entirely from stale croutons, and regret Wigbert the potato is the ring bearer. He wears them proudly on his sprouts. You perform the first dance with a reluctant parsnip. The cabbage and kettle swirl in unison. Jerome shedding leaves with abandon, Mildred steaming in ecstasy. The mollusk plays your herring flute with great sincerity and very little skill. Later, you find yourself seated beside Gregory the bucket and the jar mollusk, watching the stars peek through the chimney smoke. The molar sighs, muttering something about love being a broth. You nod. With floating bits. Someone hands you a cup of lukewarm beet fizz. You drink it. Your tongue tingles with a memory you don't recognize. The eye egg blinks at you knowingly. Back in your shed, the newlyweds are given a shelf of their own. You arrange soft cloth beneath them and whisper blessings in a language only worms understand. You unwrap a small gift from the leech choir, a napkin embroidered with your likeness, drawn entirely in red thread and confusion. You hang it with pride. You light a candle carved into the shape of a goose's foot. It smells of butter and ambition. Wigbert dozes, dreaming of rings. The pie hums lullabies. The cloak rustles. The seeds tap a celebratory rhythm in their jar. You lie down, heart full, breath fermented. You are not dead. And tonight, with love sealed in steam and leaves, that is more than enough. Tonight, you find yourself chasing cheese, not metaphorically, literally, through a market lane. In your socks, a tea began when you returned home from Mildred and Jerome's honeymoon parade, a short, slippery procession featuring cabbage confetti and a tambourine made from fish bones. You were tired, content, slightly marinated, and then the cheese escaped. A tea was the poetry cheese, the one that had been composing mold sonnets on the back shelf for 3 days. You'd left it near the door to cool, wrapped gently in a silk napkin and respect. Now it's gone. You heard it squeal once. A sharp little eep. Then the sound of skittering. Then silence. You burst from the shed, breathless, shirtless, socked, armed only with a ladle and your deepest regrets. The night is humid and smells of cooked onions and secret shame. You follow. The trail. Faint cheese crumbs, one slightly melted rhyme about longing, and at one point a note carved into a cabbage leaf that reads, "You never understood me." You nod. Fair. Eventually, the trail leads beneath the stone bench behind the Rat Catcher's Tavern. There, lit by 3 wax stubs and guarded by a dog with an eye patch, is something you are never meant to find. The cheese underground, a secret. Society of dairy runaways, rebel yogurts, and philosophical butters. You spot your poetry cheese in the corner, dramatically reciting verses to an audience of crackers and a wedge of brie, wearing a monocle. The dog blocks your entrance. Growls. You offer it half a sardine and a compliment about its posture. It allows you through. Inside, the room buzzes with lactose and rebellion. A sign reads, "United we curdle." You approach the poetry cheese. It turns slowly, mold ruffling. "I left because you grated me," it says. You pause. Then nod. "I was afraid of what you'd become. I became myself," it replies. There is a beat of silence. The brie applauds. You sit. You listen. The cheese reads a final verse. "We wrought to know the world anew, a rind, a crust, and something true." You're moved. A single tear falls into your sock. It is absorbed instantly. When the reading ends, the club members disperse. The cheese returns to you, wordlessly, and nestles into your cloak. You say nothing. Respect must be silent on the way home. You stop at the apothecary's alley, where the sniffing wall is being repainted with regret paste. The artist, a man known only as Lump, offers you a jar of emotion butter in exchange for your moth cloak's left button. Deal. You also pick up a whistle made from boiled ink, a scroll that unrolls itself at night, a bundle of dried sadness, labeled "Best Before Yesterday." Back at your shed, the pie welcomes the cheese with a knowing hum. The molar mumbles approval. The eye egg spins in place. Gregory the bucket winks. You didn't know he could. You place the poetry cheese atop a plinth of biscuit crusts and let it rest. It releases a faint sigh and begins drafting its next stanza with its own sweat. You unroll the scroll. It simply says, "Be still, but weird." You nod. Wise, the sacred sausage rustles beneath its quilt. Wigbert the potato sprouts a tiny mustache. The seeds perform a slow, graceful shuffle. You sip emotion butter by candlelight. It tastes like your first heartbreak and slightly of garlic. You lie down, arms across your chest, ladle at your side. Socks damp from history. You're not dead. And tonight, forgiven by cheese and wiser by crumbs, that is enough. Tonight, you find yourself building a boat, not a full-sized one. No, a boat small enough to fit in your bathtub. If you had a bathtub, which you don't. So instead, you use Gregory the bucket. He volunteers. Silently, the hull is made of dried potato peels, carefully stitched together with sinew and wishful thinking. The sail, a slice of cabbage, wide and veined, smelling faintly of triumph. You name it, the rotten herring, in honor of a fish you once almost befriended. But why build a boat tonight? Because the mollusk whispered to you this morning. It's time. You didn't question it. The mollusk, after all, once correctly predicted the jam shortage of '82. Now the boat sits in Gregory's basin, floating on a broth of rainwater, old perfume, and tears from a nun who couldn't spell. The sacred sausage acts as ballast. The poetry cheese has written a blessing across the sail. May your hull resist the nibble of time. You nod solemnly. Tonight's plan. Send the boat down the gutter canal behind the spice trader's shop, a route so twisty and unpredictable it's been banned for small mammals and drunkards with secrets. You pack the boat's cargo carefully. A spoon carved from panic, a pinch of mystery powder labeled, "Do not sniff directly," 3 tiny coins made of hardened beet fat, one note to the future that reads, "We tried." You're ready, outside. The wind smells of smoke and pickled brine. The alley cats hiss farewell. You set the rotten herring gently into the flowing gutter. Give it a nudge. And it's off. It glides smoothly at first, turning a graceful arc past a sleeping boot and a puddle shaped like your regrets. The mollusk watches from your shoulder, humming a tune only jellyfish know, but halfway through the first bend, disaster, a leaf. Massive. Wet. Angry. It strikes the hull. The boat wobbles. The sacred sausage lets out a strangled blurg. The beat. Fat coins slide to one side. The spoon spins wildly. You gasp, but then salvation. A rat, wearing a monocle and riding a thimble, pushes the leaf aside with a tiny paddle and salutes. You salute back, overcome. The boat rights itself and continues down the gutter, vanishing into the fog with a faint splash and the smell of mustard. You exhale. Back home, you prepare a small memorial ceremony in case the rotten herring never returns. You light a candle shaped like disappointment. The seeds perform a dirge. The molar whispers, "Salt." It always ends in salt. Gregory the bucket remains unusually silent. That worries you. You kneel beside him. "Gregory," you whisper. "No." Clang. No tilt. No gurgle. You place your ear to his rim. Stillness. You panic briefly and pour a splash of emotion butter into his basin. Nothing. Then a bubble. Then plink, a single tear of rust. He's alive. Just. Thinking. You nod. Give him space. Later. You receive a visitor, a boy, pale and wide-eyed, holding a soaked biscuit in trembling hands. It came back. He whispers. The biscuit is stamped with your ladle mark. You recognize it. It was packed in the ship. You take it gently. What else did it bring? The boy holds out a fish scale painted with a map. On it, your shed, the river, the word, soon. You feed him a raisin. He disappears into the night. You study the scale. You taste salt. You feel watched. The poetry cheese gasps. Having seen something in its own reflection, you wrap yourself in the moth cloak. The sacred sausage pulses once, then falls still again. You lie down beside Gregory, who gently tilts toward you. You're not dead. And tonight, with a boat in the gutter and a message on a scale, that is enough. Tonight, you find yourself waiting not for sleep, nor stew, nor the sweet relief of a good sneeze, but for something far stranger. You're waiting for the boat, the rotten herring. It's been 3 nights since you sent it into the gutter. 3 nights since the monocled rat saved it from a leaf. 3 nights since the boy appeared with the soaked biscuit and the fish scale map. Since then, nothing. Only dreams. Dreams of cabbage sails and humming mollusks, of spoons whispering, riddles and coins clinking in foreign puddles. Tonight, the air smells like old spinach and thunder. That's how you know it's coming. You dress in silence. wool sock on one foot, lettuce wrap on the other. Your ladle is strapped to your back, like a sword of soup. The molar mutters in its sleep, something about tides and butter. The egg spins slowly. Gregory the bucket hums a low, metallic drone, like a forgotten kettle remembering a tune. You open the door. The wind slaps you gently, carrying a note. Of pickled wind, you follow the scent, down through Catsbet Alley, past the snoring lamplighter and the girl who speaks only to puddles. You take the turn at the butcher's stain and hop the fence behind the cobbler's kiln, and there, in the moonlit gutter, it rests, the rotten herring, damaged. Glorious. Slick with tails, its cabbage sail is torn, now stitched together with beet. Fiber and, curiously, an embroidered handkerchief reading, "To my sweetest worm." A gift, perhaps, inside the hull. You find a note inked in mashed elderberries, signed only with a scale-shaped symbol. You read aloud, "We have seen the edge." The rats bow to you, send more spoons. You sit on the cobbles, overwhelmed. The boat has made contact. It has crossed boundaries. It has parleyed. You return home at dawn, cradling the boat like a sloshing saint. The pie welcomes it with a soft verse. A hull returns, its secret steeped in brine and hope, forever leaked, the molar weeps. The sacred sausage hums in a key you didn't know existed. The jar mollusk salutes from atop its ladder. The gentle crunch ensemble taps a waltz. Wigbert the potato has sprouted tiny arms. One waves, you decide to build a dock. Right in your shed, Gregory volunteers as dry dock supervisor. He clangs once, authoritatively. You place the rotten herring on a folded cloth of regret and rice husks, then carefully unpack its cargo. A coin from a land where soup is law, a feather soaked in onion ink, a crust shaped like a weeping face, and one small, living leaf of spinach glowing faintly, pulsing softly, Alaveu blink. Spinach has returned. It is reborn, the molar gasps. The prophecy, it whispers. The leaf of second soup, you place the spinach on the altar of forgotten herbs. The room warms. The pie giggles nervously. The fish scale map shimmers in its jar. The sausage, for the first time in 2 weeks, snorts. That night, you host a feast. Guests include 2 traveling snails with stories of the north drain a beetle who claims to have once been soup a shadow in a hood, who brings pickled air, and, of course, the cabbage couple Mildred and Jerome, who now roll in matching slipper-sews, serve a salad of nothing but hope, drizzle it with thimble vinegar, and chant the song of leaky boats. The seeds dance. The egg emits a single beam of light. You lie down with the spinach leaf resting on your chest. It is warm, soft, important. You are not dead. And tonight, with your boat returned and the soup leaf reborn, that is enough. Tonight, you find yourself holding court, your shed, usually a haven of wrought, quiet madness and fermenting dreams, has become a courtroom. The molar demanded it. The mollusk seconded the motion. The sausage remained silent, but vibrated. Meaningfully, the case? Clarissa the spoon, accused of betrayal. You found her this morning, lodged behind Gregory the bucket, with a ribbon around her neck, and the words, "Property of the Upper Drain Council," scratched into her handle. A spy. Perhaps. Or a gift. Or just a spoon with identity issues. Either way, the molar refused to let it pass. A trial, it insisted, rolling in circles. Justice must be stirred, not swallowed. You agreed, partly because you enjoy ceremony, and partly because it was too foggy to go scavenging. You arranged the courtroom as best you could. Presiding judge, the egg, now affixed with a monocle carved from beet rind. Jury, 5 dancing seeds. Wigbert the potato with his new finger, and Jerome. The cabbage, prosecution. The poetry cheese. Now in its vengeful brie phase, defense, yourself, because you once used Clarissa to save a trapped ant from soup, and that has to count for something. The trial begins with formality. Gregory clangs thrice. The mollusk performs an overture. On the herring flute, the pie recites a list of grievances from all spoons that have ever been licked and abandoned. Clarissa is placed gently on a soapbox made of pressed croutons. She says nothing because she is, of course, a spoon, but her silence is interpreted as smug by the cheese and stoic by you. The prosecution argues that Clarissa had left the fold, that she was seen conversing with a ladle from the enemy's sink, that she once stirred sugar into tea, not broth, and smirked while doing so. The defense, you argue that spoons deserve freedom, that perhaps she was undercover, that spoons, like people, sometimes just want to swirl. Wigbert weeps softly. The seeds sway in conflicted harmony. The cabbage looks inward. The egg spins once, then stops. Verdict guilty. Of curiosity, but not treason. Sentence: Clarissa is to be forgiven and reassigned to ceremonial jam duty. You bow. The mollusk bursts into applause by slapping itself with its own shell. The molar hums a happy minor chord, but the celebration is cut short. You hear it, a soft with sound, like someone slowly folding a sneeze, and then nothing. Total, perfect, alarming silence. The jar mollusk freezes. The poetry cheese stiffens. The sacred sausage quivers and begins to glow faintly orange. You know what this is, the great silence leak. It's rare. It's unnatural. It happens when someone somewhere in the city says the forbidden phrase, "I think it's clean now." The world listens, holds its breath. The sound disappears. You rush outside. No dogs barking. No boots splashing. No belching from the tavern. Even the night frogs are frozen in mid-ribbit. You wave your arms. Clap. Whistle. Nothing. You know what must be done. You must restore the sound. You run back into the shed and gather your instruments. The herring flute, a jug of screaming pickles. The tin pan that always sounds like an apology, and finally, Clarissa, you climb atop the rickety tower of crates labeled, "Definitely not cursed," and begin to play. The flute emits a hollow wheeze. The pan clanks like remorse. The pickles howl like angry winds in a pickle cathedral. And then Clarissa, you tap her gently against Gregory. Ping. It echoes. You tap again, pinning. The mollusk joins in with wet thumps. The molar taps its base against the floor like a philosophical metronome. The pie chants in reverse. The seeds perform a percussive hop. The sound returns like a trickle. Then a flood. Frogs croak. Dogs bark. The tavern belches resume. A merchant down the street yells about radishes. Somewhere, someone farts with confidence. The world exhales. You sit down, exhausted. Clarissa lies across your lap. You stroke her gently. "I knew you hadn't left us." You whisper. Gregory gurgles in pride. Back inside. You reward your companions with a feast. Crusted bean paste, dandelion syrup, a lukewarm egg, and a mystery. Ball discovered under the floorboard, possibly edible. Probably not. You light the wax goose candle. Its glow is uneven but reassuring. You write a note in your journal. Let no silence go unchecked. Clarissa will lead the noise when we cannot. You fold it and place it beneath the sacred sausage, who has resumed its gentle hum. You lie down. The molar sleeps beside your ear. The pie curls into itself. The egg watches the ceiling, ever alert. You're not dead. And tonight, in a world restored by spoon song and pickle scream that is more than enough, tonight, you find yourself carving a finger out of carrot, not because you need one, not because someone asked, but because sometimes, when the moon hangs limp in the sky like a moldy dumpling, you feel the need to whittle. The carrot is old. soft, more orange in memory than reality. But you carve nonetheless, shaping the tip with your crust knife, hollowing the knuckle with your ladle's handle. You etch a nail from a sliver of beet peel. It looks disturbingly lifelike. You name it Trevor, Trevor the carrot finger. You place him gently beside Wigbert the potato, who stares in admiration and possibly jealousy. Wigbert flexes his new sprouts he's been practicing. Tonight feels strange, the sausage hums, but off-key. The eye egg has rolled into a corner, sulking. The molar keeps muttering, false dawn, under its breath. You taste tension in the air. Or maybe that's the sardine pie you tried to swallow an hour ago. You step outside. The wind smells like vinegar and closing arguments. You walk through Sniffler's Row, where the cobbles are sticky from jam riots. Past Widow Cleek's window, where paper puppets dance of their own accord. Through the alley of boots, where every shoe left behind has something to say. That's when you hear it, the moo. You freeze. It comes again. Deep, drawn out, full of bass and implication. You know this moo. You haven't heard it in 3 years. Not since you sealed the door. Not since you swore never to return. It's the mooing door. It was once just a creaky panel behind the fishmonger's chimney. Then someone fed it cabbage. It moaned. Then they gave it a name. It mooed. Then it demanded payment in crumbs and secrets. Then it tried to leave. You're not ready. But the city needs you. You find the alley. The shadows lean backward. The rats flee without flair. There it stands, still hinged to nothing, propped up between 2 bins of regret and snail husks. You bow, door. You say. It moos. What do you want? A long silence. Then a gust of pickled air. You understand. It's hungry. It wants stories. You reach into your satchel and retrieve the scroll that unrolls itself at night. It squirms. You approach the door. It moos again. This time softer. Almost shy, you touch the scroll to the knob. Thump. The scroll unrolls violently, slapping the cobblestones. Its words glowing briefly in the gutter light. He who feeds the door must also feed the door's echo. You wince. The echo. You'd forgotten about the echo. The mooing door always brings its twin, the quiet crack. A barely audible creak that follows you for days after, whispering secrets you didn't want to know. Like who's been stealing your pickled plums. Or how many beetles live in your scarf. You sigh and accept your fate. You offer the door a song, played on the herring flute, accompanied by Clarissa tapping on a jar of lentil glue. The mollusk dances. The sausage glows green. The door moves in 3 tones and shudders. Then silence. You return home with the scroll now blank. The quiet crack is already following you. You can feel it whispering in your left earlobe. The pie judges you. The pie has always judged you. You glance at the pie. It averts its crust. You are not surprised. You place Trevor the carrot finger into a dish of vinegar to preserve him. He floats like a noble turd. Wigbert growls. You unwrap a gift left at your door, a pouch of ear-shaped cookies and a note that reads, "For your service to the door. Don't eat more than 3. Or do, you eat 1. It tastes like apology and lemon Clarissa has taken. To sleeping beside the molar, who now hums lullabies in Morse code. The eye egg sulks in the corner, but with flair, you curl beneath your cabbage quilt, mind heavy with moo and crackle. You are not dead. And tonight, haunted by doors and forgiven. By carrots, that is enough. Tonight, you find yourself wearing a hat made of frogs, not real frogs. That would be cruel. They're ceremonial frogs carved from crusty dough, painted with fermented mint, and blessed by a monk who sneezes in Latin. They're stitched together. With leek threads and balanced atop your head, with all the grace of a cabbage on a spoon, you are dressed for court. Again, but this time, you are not the judge, nor the accused. Tonight, you are the summoned. The Frog Council has called you. And no one ignores the Frog Council. Not after what happened to the chimney sweep who snored during testimony. He was turned into soup, unseasoned. You follow the signs. Faint croaks in the wind, breadcrumbs shaped like verdicts, and the haunting echo of rhythmic rivets in 3/4 time through the gutter passage. Across Slop Hill and down into the warty hollow where the court resides, a circle of wet stones, a throne of lily pads, and a jury of 13 frogs wearing powdered wigs made of mold. They croak in unison. Thomas, you bow. Your frog head bounces gently. The high toad speaks. You are brought here on suspicion of jam concealment. You freeze the jam. You remember. You found it 3 nights ago. Behind the old vinegar press a small jar, sealed with wax and tied with twine. You opened it only a little. Just a peek. It breathed. You never spoke of it until now. The high toad glares. You opened the forbidden preserve. You read its pulp. You tasted its prophecy. You begin to protest, but the molar who has come. As your counsel taps once against your shin, say nothing. A small frog leaps forward with the evidence. The jar, still pulsating faintly. The jam within glows a strange reddish hue, whispering words like betrayal, biscuits, and it was Thursday. The counsel listens. The pie takes the stand next, offering poetic defense. The jam was old, but Thomas bold did taste, and hold these stories cold. A ripple of croaks. You feel hope. Then the jar opens itself. A single voice escapes, clear and sticky. He knows the muffin secret. Gasps. Croaks. One juror falls into the pond. They know what this means. The muffin. Secret is a sacred text, long lost to the ovens. Said to grant the eater knowledge of all breakfast. With butter. You are never supposed to know. The frogs retreat to deliberate. You sit in silence. The mollusk offers you a pickle for comfort. Wigbert, who has come wearing a small bow tie made of onion skin, pats your foot. The sacred sausage hums a protective note. Finally, the frogs return. Verdict guilty. But useful sentence. You must return the jam to its resting place deep within the muffin cavern beneath the old scone forest. You nod. Accept your fate. They reward you with a single coin made of pressed beetroot and a certificate that reads amphibiously tolerated. You leave Warty Hollow as the frogs chant. Bread may burn, but jam remembers. Back in your shed, the jam sits on your shelf, contained once more. You wrap it in wool and sorrow, place it in a box made of biscuit crumbs, and mark it. 2. Not feed Thursdays. The eye egg spins nervously. The molar is silent. The pie sweats. Gregory the bucket whispers. So it begins. You do not ask what. You simply sip your dandelion broth, light a candle made of snail wax, and hum a tune your toes remember from dreams. You lie down. Above you, the jam pulses once, gently. You are not dead. And tonight, watched by jam and judged by frogs, that is enough. Tonight, you find yourself descending into the muffin cavern. A tea begins before dawn, in the hour where rats sleep with their eyes open, and the fog tastes like lukewarm porridge. You strap the jam of forbidden knowing to your chest carefully, so it doesn't whisper, and gather your party. Yes, a party. No quest into pastry depth is ever done alone. Your companions, the molar, now sharpened slightly on one side, muttering tactical advice like, split the crumb, and flour remembers. Wigbert the potato, wearing a helmet made of snail. Shell and holding a spoon he now calls Justice. Clarissa the spoon, fully forgiven and freshly polished. The sacred sausage, now affixed to a staff and glowing an uneasy teal, and the mollusk, who insists on being carried in a pouch labeled General. You leave a note on your shed door. Gone muffining. If I return crusty, burn me. The road is long and strewn with dry toast. Literally. It crunches underfoot with every step, the sound of lost breakfasts echoing across the hills you cross. A bridge built entirely from burnt scones, a valley where jam once flooded, leaving behind sticky fossils, a meadow haunted by the smell of powdered sugar and despair. And finally, at the edge of the world, you see it, Muffin Gorge, a great yawning chasm lined with flaky walls and biscuit crumbs, with steam rising gently from its depths like a well-baked volcano. Somewhere down there, among the ancient muffin molds and the whispers of the lost baker monks, lies the muffin altar where the forbidden jam must be returned. You tie a rope of cheese rinds around your waist and begin the descent. At first, the path is manageable, soft, yeasty ground beneath your feet. But soon it turns treacherous, sliding patches of forgotten batter, frosting slicks that threaten to send you tumbling. And worst of all, the biscuit bats, they appear in a swarm, each one flat, flaky, and slightly cinnamon-scented. There, wings beat in frantic rhythm. You shield your face with your cloak of mold. Wigbert brandishes his spoon. Clarissa clangs defiantly against a rock. The molar bites one mid-air. It explodes into crumbs. Victory. You push deeper, guided now only by the jam's vibrations. It pulses like a guilty heart. At last, you reach the altar, a slab of ancient stone, carved in the shape of an open muffin. Around it, remnants of pastry. Priesthood of mitts petrified with time, ceremonial whisks, and a faded banner that reads, "Thou shalt not overmix." You place the jar on the altar. It moans once, then silence. A great gust of warm, buttery air sweeps through the cavern, extinguishing your lantern and filling your lungs with the scent of forgiveness. The jam glows briefly, then melts into the altar. Gone, balance is restored. The molar weeps. Wigbert salutes the rising muffin steam. Clarissa bows. The sausage spins in place and fizzes faintly. You have done it. The cavern walls hum in approval. A passage opens, a shortcut back to the surface, lined with raisin lights and crumbling cupcake stalagmites. You emerge, coated in flour and fate. The city greets you with mild confusion. A passerby asks, "Did you win?" You nod. The jam sleeps again. She offers you a stale croissant. You eat it without blinking. Back in your shed, you unwrap a welcome home gift from the pie, a slice of silence and a napkin embroidered with the phrase, "He who muffins must also crumb." You hang it proudly beside your first spoon. Gregory, the bucket clangs in welcome. The eye-egg spins clockwise, a rare sign of approval. The mollusk snores in its pouch. You bathe in barley water and dreams. The molar hums a lullaby about yeast. Wigbert finally sits down and sighs deeply. Like a vegetable who's seen things, you lie down. You're not dead. And tonight, with the jam buried and your soul lightly toasted, that is enough. Tonight, you find yourself digging a grave, not for a person, not for a rat, not even for a pie, though the poetry cheese has long predicted one shall fall. No. Tonight, you bury the fly swatter. It was never named, and now you regret that. For years, it served you loyally, batting, swiping, flinging, even fanning on particularly fragrant evenings. It had bristles of horsehair or possibly sock, a handle made from a bent table leg, and a faint scent of vinegar and trauma. You found it this morning behind Gregory, split in half. A clean break. Murder? Accident? Spontaneous swatter combustion? No witnesses. The mollusk claimed to be asleep. The molar refused to engage in object-based disputes. Wigbert said only, "Time takes all things, even flat ones." So you dig. The hole is shallow, as your dirt is mostly compost and bad decisions. You place the fly swatter gently at the bottom, wrapped in a shroud of toasted napkins. You say a few words. You struck the flying. You stirred the soup. You were wooden, but not without soul. Clarissa taps her bowl. The pie offers a crumb in tribute. The sausage hums one long, reverent note, but just as you begin to refill the grave, the wind shifts. It carries a scent, not foul, not fresh. Familiar, radish. You turn slowly. You haven't seen radish in years, not since the salad war. You still remember that fateful night, the betrayal at Beetroot Crossing, the screams of chopped fennel, the chaotic crunching. Radish was exiled, declared too spicy, too bold, and yet here it is. Not just any radish. Radolf, the one with the scar, the one who once whispered recipes that made onions cry. He's older now, wrinkled, dusted in parsley flakes. Thomas, he says, bowing low. The leaves remember. You bow back cautious. Radolf pulls from his satchel a scroll made from cabbage skin. You unroll it with trembling fingers. It reads, "The end of alliance rises. The croutons march. We must dress or perish." You understand immediately. A salad rebellion is coming. The lettuce once loyal, now limp with fury. The croutons hard and angry. The vinegar split. You know your role. You are not a warrior. You are not a diplomat. You are the collector. They need your shed, your artifacts, your sausage, your egg, your pickled wisdom. You are to be the keeper of relics in the salad uprising. You agree. Radolf hands you a sealed jar. Inside, a single olive, pierced with a tiny flag made of leaked paper. The sigil of the coming toss. You place it beside the sacred sausage. Later, back inside, you gather your allies, the molar, now carved with tiny runes of dressing ratios. Wigbert, training by lifting spoonfuls of gravy. The jar mollusk, who has begun wearing a helmet made of cheese rind. Clarissa, polished to a near spiritual shin. Even the eye egg is alert again, its yolk glowing faintly with purpose. You prepare for war the only way you know. Baking, you mix regret and flour, fold in bits of hard memory, a splash of rainwater, and bake until the edges sing. The result, a dozen tiny biscuits, hard as loyalty. You feed one to each companion. They chew slowly, except the molar, who simply absorbs. Gregory the bucket lets out a rallying clang. You hang a banner above the door. We do not dress lightly. Outside, thunder rolls. A sprig of thyme lands on your windowsill. You take it. As a sign, you light your final onion candle. The scent burns your eyes in a way that feels sacred. You lie down, arms folded across your chest, carrot dagger at your side. You're not dead. And tonight, called once more by radish and fate, that is enough. Tonight, you find yourself staring at a throne made of spoons. It wasn't here this morning. You returned from your compost pilgrimage 3 hours in the fog, 2 dropped jars. One encounter with a squirrel who claimed to be a retired locksmith, and there it was. Center of your shed. Majestic. Gleaming. Wobbly. 43 spoons of various shapes and allegiance, welded together with biscuit glue and ambition. Atop the throne, a wasp, not a big wasp, not a glowing, winged harbinger. Just a small, ordinary wasp, but she's wearing a crown made of onion skin and a sash that reads Queen in beet ink. You know immediately what this means. The vinegar war has begun. You had hoped it was just rumors, whispers carried on the Tangy winds, overheard beneath pickled barrels and mustard clouds. But now, here, in your shed, sits Her Majesty the Acid Wasp, emissary of the Vinegar Kingdom. You bow, Your Highness, you say carefully. She buzzes once formal, clipped. Commanding. From beneath her wing, a scroll. Tiny, crisp. Rolled tight with pepper thread, you unroll it and read, by order of the Bryn monarch, Thomas the Scavenger is hereby drafted into the great dressage. His shed is to become a war pantry, his spoon. Clarissa is to be knighted, his sausage glowing and sacred must be bathed in beetlight and preserved. He must report to the field of slaw by dawn. You nod, duty. The molar spins in its jar. Wigbert has already donned his pickled plate armor. His expression, firm tuber resolve. Clarissa rests calmly in her velvet sleeve. She's ready. She always was. The mollusk insists on polishing the wasps. Throne. You allow it. He works gently, humming in bubbles. You prepare. First, sealing the jam relics. The forbidden jar is locked within a cabbage safe beneath your bed, surrounded by crumbs of holy bread. Second, the eye egg. You wrap it in 9 layers of lettuce and whisper. Watch, but do not intervene. It wiggles once. Third, the sausage. You suspend it in a net made of mint stems and hang it above the mold shrine. The glow now pulses in rhythm with your heartbeat. You try not to think about that. Midnight. You light the old garlic torch, the one you swore you'd only use again in case of condiment emergency. This qualifies. You exit the shed and march through Mayonnaise Hollow, past the pickle gates. Beneath the Thousand Island Bridge, dotted to the edge of the field of slaw, they await you, the armies of acid to your left, the mustard militia, armed with squeeze bags and sour resolve, the chive scouts, mounted on radish. Dogs the Thousand Island irregulars, whispering secrets in creamy unison to your right, the coleslaw cavalry, crunching ominously, the vinaigrette archers. Quivers sloshing the basilic order, floating gently on aromatic, winded in the center, atop a platform made of jar lids and celery bones. The Bryn monarch, cloaked in salt and vinegar steam, you approach. Bow low, a spoon is placed in your hand. Not Clarissa, she stands beside you, gleaming, resolute, but a new one. Heavy, ceremonial. The handle carved into a spiral of mustard seeds. The Bryn monarch speaks. Thomas the Scavenger, keeper of crumbs, lord of the dripping ladle. You are needed. The lettuce rebellion grows. The croutons rise. The mayonnaise stirs. You nod. I am yours. A cheer goes up. The chive hounds bark. The pickles roll forward. You are shown your tent made of stitched parchment and old stew steam and given your battle orders to construct the vinegar engines, barrel catapults, spoon ball slingers, dressing mines. You are in your element. You work all night, surrounded by moth lanterns and beat scouts. Clarissa helps with the fuses. Wigbert supervises from atop a pickle barrel. The mollusk sings rally songs and bubbling falsetto to dawn. The sky turns a strange yellow-green. You know that color. It's ranch smoke. The creamy armies approach. You stand at the edge of the field, spoon raised. Clarissa at your side, the sacred. Sausage pulsing in the back of your mind. A beetle hands you a helmet made of toast. You put it on. You are not dead. And tonight, on the eve of slaw and siege, vinegar and valor, that is enough. Tonight, you find yourself knee-deep in slaw, not metaphorically, literally. Shredded cabbage, carrot ribbons. A single confused raisin clings to your sock. The battlefield is chaos. The ranch offensive began at dawn. Thick white clouds rolled over. The field of slaw, blanketing the front lines in creamy fog. The chive scouts disappeared first, then the vinaigrette archers. You heard a gurgle, a squish, a whisper. Too much buttermilk. You held your ground. Your vinegar engines launched. Volley after volley, jars of aged brine, globs of horseradish syrup, and fire-pickled gherkins. The mustard militia sang as they flung their squeeze bags. Wigbert led a charge with a celery pike, yelling for the dressing, for the crunch. Clarissa fought like a storm. You saw her spin through the mist, her polished surface flashing as she parried a spork and deflected a glob of low-fat betrayal. She screamed only once a sharp clang when struck by a rogue crouton. That's when everything changed. The croutons defected. They had pledged allegiance to crunch neutrality, promised to serve texture and nothing more. But now they rolled in tight formations alongside the ranch infantry, their once golden crust soaked in creamy deceit. Traitors, the brinned monarch wept. A single tear fell into a bowl of sauerkraut and turned it to prophecy. You caught it in your ladle. It hissed. You ran, not in fear and strategy. To the back lines, to the sacred sausage. You found it in your camp, still suspended above the mold. Shrine, its teal glow pulsing with power. The sausage had not spoken in days. But now, as ranch forces closed in, it began to tremble. You reached toward it, the sausage lifted itself. Floated, a low hum filled the air. The eye egg blinked once, then shattered into soft yolk light. The molar gasped. The pie began to chant. Rise, O link of meat and truth. Split the sauce, uncork the youth. The sausage ignited, not in flame and flavor. It spun, hovered, and exploded into steam. When it cleared, there stood before you a figure, tall, cloaked in casing, arms of smoked sinew, a mustache of fennel seed, the sausage prophet. You fall to your knees. He speaks. Thomas, he says, voice like roasted garlic and thunder. The time has come. The lettuce wound must be healed. You don't ask what that means. You simply nod. He hands you a scroll. On it, a recipe, the dressing of unity, dado an ancient sauce, lost since the fork rebellions, said to bind even opposing salads, to emulsify enemies. You read the ingredients aloud. 3 drops of remorse vinegar, a teaspoon of grated honesty, 2 cloves of shared memory oil of acceptance, a single crushed regret, 2 of everything except the regret. You know what must be done. You return to the front lines. Find Clarissa, cracked but whole. Wigbert, limping but proud. The mollusk now rides a chive steed. You hold the final ingredient in your heart. The night you overboiled the pickles, you had sworn to never speak of it. The smell, the texture, the betrayal. You carry it still. You whisper it into the scroll. The air changes. The clouds part. The dressing of unity forms in your ladle, thick, glowing, warm like memory, sharp like childhood. You lift it high. Everyone freezes, even the ranch. The croutons stop mid-crunch. The basilic order kneels. A piece of rogue lettuce folds itself in half. You speak. Mayonnaise divides. Oil binds. Let this dressing dress us all. You pour it onto the battlefield, into the wounds, over the salads, onto the plates. The war ends in silence. A single spoon clinks, then peace. You return to your shed in the dark, your clothes damp with destiny. The molar sleeps. The scroll curls in satisfaction. The sausage prophet dissolves into cured mist. Gregory the bucket, silent since the first volley, lets out a single soft burble. Clarissa rests beside your bed, no longer a weapon, but legend. You lie down. The wind outside carries the scent of garlic and hope. You're not dead. And tonight, held in the arms of emulsified peace, that is enough. Tonight, you find yourself hosting a feast, not a dinner, not a supper. A feast the kind that follows only the strangest wars, in the strangest cities, after the strangest. Peace.it begins at dusk. Your shed, once a place of solitary rotting and ladle polishing, is now transformed. The walls are strung with garlands of pickled daffodils. Lanterns carved from hollowed turnips flicker gently, filled with snail wax. And flavored steam. The old, "We do not dress lightly" banner has been turned inside out. It now reads, "We dress together." The survivors arrive one by one. The mustard militia brings jars of heirloom mustard, each swirl glittering like edible stars. The chive scouts roll in pickled onions, still warm from their underground oven. The basilic order arrives barefoot. Robes damp with vinaigrette and purpose, the croutons roll in shyly. Shamefaced and crisp, you meet them at the gate. "We were hungry," says the eldest, crust cracking with remorse. You place your hand on his crumbed shoulder. So were we all, inside. You seat them beside the Thousand Island irregulars. No knives are drawn. Only forks. Only scooping, Clarissa shines in a place of honor. Now used to serve not judgment, but jam. She hums with happiness. Or perhaps resonance. Wigbert the potato sits at the head of the table, his tiny arms folded like a stern but loving uncle. He has grown moss. The moss wears a hat. The molar rests in a glass of buttermilk, swirling slowly and repeating, "Chew slowly, live." Longer. No one questions him. The jar mollusk rides a soup ladle like a gondola, ferrying olives across bowls. His helmet is now polished. It reflects the candlelight like prophecy. Even the eye egg has reappeared, nestled in a bed of boiled lentils. It watches. Always, and the sausage prophet. Gone, or perhaps not. Some say the steam from the cauldron bends differently now. That when you breathe it in, you remember things you never lived. That your tongue learns the taste of forgiveness. You raise your ladle. Silence falls. You clear your throat. Tap the table gently. And begin. We came in pieces. We leave in peace. Our salad was torn. Our dressing reborn. May your croutons stay crunchy. May your vinegar stay sharp. And may your spoons never betray applause. Gentle at first, then raucous. A pickled beet is tossed in celebration. It lands in a cup of broth and is declared the new mayor. You feast, you eat, pudding of peace layered with old truths and soft cheese regret rolls sweet, with a bite of salt unity slaw sliced thin, dressed thick, served warm. Whispering crumbs, they don't say much, but they're sincere you drink. Basil wine water from the gutter of memory, and a special brew known only as brine lightning. It hits hard. You hear your ancestors. One of them tells you to floss mordate as night deepens. The laughter slows. The spoons clink softer. The candles burn low. You step outside, holding your final bite of biscuit shaped like a heart, filled with onion jam. And something you can't name. The moon above you is round and forgiving. The air smells of thyme and endings. You breathe, you think of the war, of the egg, of the jam, of the things you carried, of the things that carried you. You whisper, "Thank you, ladle." The ladle, strapped to your back, is warm back inside. Your guests sleep where they sit, in soup bowls, on crouton cushions, on piles of lettuce with dignity. You tiptoe around them, checking each tucking in a radish here, adjusting a napkin there. Clarissa rests by your pillow. Gregory, the bucket is full again, not of filth, but of rainwater and flower petals. The scroll of muffin law hangs over your bed. Wigbert hums in his sleep. It sounds like home. You lie down, full, tired, cleansed. You're not dead. And tonight, with spoon in hand and crumbs in your soul, that is enough. Tonight, you find yourself alone, not lonely, no, merely alone, in the way a kettle sits quietly after the tea is poured, in the way a well still echoes long after the bucket is drawn. The feast is over. The field of slaw is silent. The brind monarch has returned to the vinegar glade. The croutons have begun therapy. The mustard soldiers went home singing, and you are here, Dot, in your shed, your boots by the door, your cloak of moths folded and retired. Clarissa rests on a velvet napkin, her edge dulled not by battle, but by service. She glows faintly. Reverent, the sacred sausage has vanished completely. No sizzle, no pulse, no scent. Some say it became vapor, others an idea. You're not sure. But when the broth simmers just right, and the air smells of fennel and fate, you feel its presence. Gregory the bucket is quiet now, filled with clean water and floating petals. You catch a reflection in him, sometimes older, crustier, but at peace. He gurgles once every evening. Like a sigh, Wigbert the potato has taken a post in the newly founded Ministry of Soups. He writes you weekly letters, signed in mud. His last note read simply, "We're all stew in the end. Yours in starch, Wig, the molar, buried Dot in the soil behind your shed, beneath a stone carved with one word, Chew, the mollusk, gone on pilgrimage, floating down the gutter river, whispering, gospel to wandering snails." Some say he's started a school, others a tavern. You believe both, and you make soup each night. One pot, no recipe. Only instinct, leftovers, and the quiet hum of intuition. Tonight's brew. A piece of dry bread once used as a bookmark, a soft turnip who told you its name before you chopped it, a single beat coin from the vinegar front a whisper. Of old thyme, gifted by the basilic order, one of Clarissa's tersu spoons can cry. Just once, you light the fire with peelings and pressed apologies, the broth bubbles. Slowly, kindly, you sit beside it, outside. The wind whistles through pickle vines. Somewhere, a bird sings off-key. A cat sneezes. Life returns, you ladle the soup into a chipped bowl. Sip. It tastes of everything. Victory, loss, salt, dust. The first spoon you ever held. A friend you forgot you loved. The last laugh you shared with a beat. A door that never closed. Clarissa clinks gently, like a lullaby. You set down the bowl and lie back on your bed of straw, mold, and soft linen once worn by a noble goose. The ceiling above you creaks. The candle burns out, and for a moment, only a moment, you feel it. A soft warmth in your chest, a memory you never made, a voice, barely audible, whispering. The soup was always you. You smile. You are not dead, and tonight, in silence, in steam, in the sacred echo of spoons that is more than enough.